September, October, the regional athlete has a number of free days. But those free days, they get used up. You know, like, Halves. So we went, my wife and I went to the symphony yesterday. It's just free. It's a good way to like sample. Would you want to get a symphony? Yeah, probably. But let's sample first. Would you want to go to see the Canada Garden? Yeah. Would you want to go see, they have a separate garden that's further out. And with the forest, it's starting to grow. We might not pay for that. Go see it. So next December. Look at it. And you get a really good CMU discount. So, yeah. Look at CMU staff discount. Even on the top of it. Often label CMU staff. See that. It's on the CMU website. And it's discount page.
Smart.
We took a baby step in the opera, like going to an English the summer camp. And it was really good. It was basically the summer camp. They do it. And it was all about so that was good. Then we went to
Yeah, that's.
So I'm waiting until it's 9, and then I assume that these have the signal, hopefully. But that's what I'm going with so far. That's where I'm at. Is it good, or?
Are we going to move to the center initially, or what's the plan?
Well, for the feedback, I don't have one of my staff meetings. I'm gonna have to start talking about so there's a little, if you look at the phone, there's like some that don't really feel like, not everyone's gonna see it first. I think that's sort of like this quiet way to do it. You don't have to make some right there.
I'm sorry.
All right. Good morning. Welcome to Halves Day 2. To those on the stream, welcome. So this morning, I think we have 6 teams. They'll be presenting 15 minutes, 5 minutes for Q&A. I will have the little signs. I'll be acting as Drew today for you all. So watch me for the 5 minutes, 1 minute warning, and the stop warning. Also be running the clock. And for those on the stream, for those who are watching, the teams will be presenting their halfway presentation, which is about where they are in the semester, and a lot about where they're going and where they hope to be by the end. And so with that, I think we're ready to go. Team, you ready?
We're good? Yeah.
All right. STEMspire, let's kick it off.
Hi, hello everyone. We are Team STEMspire. This is James. I'm Yuchan. This is Hannah. This is Angelina, and this is Phoebe. Our clients are Mike and Ricardo. Our instructors are Mike and Ricardo, and our client is John Baelish. And our project design goal is we will deliver a role-playing games that teaches 8th graders about identifying and counteracting racial bias as part of a racial bias workshop. And here's our trailer. Yeah, so I'm going to pass out to Hannah to talk about the metrics and the narratives.
So the measurements we are using for our success are meeting the client requirements, play testing, and storytelling. Yes. Most of the feedback we received from quarters can be summarized in the following 3 points. We needed clarity on the goal of the game, whether or not racial bias should be front and center, and then what type of beings our characters were going to be. We had some concerns with making racial bias the front and center. The main one was that research shows that obvious educational threads can lead to the audience being resistant to learning whatever lesson is trying to be taught. And so we wanted to avoid this. And additionally, we wanted to ensure a strong use of the video game medium. So we decided that our approach would be to embed subtle messages and examples into the game, and then the facilitators could pull these out and use these in the workshop. We decided to do a science fiction setting in order to underscore our secondary focus on STEM. And our message will mainly be conveyed through dialogue, examples, character, body language, and environmental storytelling. So the general storyline is that the player character is a pilot whose ship got hit by an asteroid and they have to land at a nearby spaceport for repairs. Their robot companion, RC, recommends a non-marginalized mechanic. They bring the mechanic to help, and the mechanic fixes what they can, but there are things that are too specialized for them to fix. The mechanic recommends a marginalized mechanic for specialized repairs, but the RC resists, citing that the marginalized mechanic doesn't fit the profile, and an argument ensues. The player character goes to find the second mechanic on their own, and the second mechanic is able to fix the ship, and as the player character and RC are leaving, the robot takes time to reflect on how they could be wrong about this person. We are also offering an option for players to offer the marginalized mechanic a chance to go with them to pursue their dream of becoming an engineer. So we are using our narrative to introduce the concept of racial bias and how it can be harmful to both the society that the bias targets, as well as the society that perpetuates the bias. And we want to make sure to include teachable moments in the narrative that can then be used in the workshop as examples while keeping the lesson subtle enough to keep the audience engaged. For example, using RC as an example of AI bias. And now I will pass it off to Yu-chan to talk about the characters.
Yeah, so now as you can see, here's our character and environment examples. Yeah, and in the first and the second version, we tried some humanoid aliens and also monsters and tried to give them characteristics. But after several rounds of editing and also collecting the advice and suggestions from the instructors, we decided to make characters more like human and also have human features. Because human characters are more natural and they don't need to take too much steps for a target audience to relate. Yeah, so here are our current character in the game, and they are robot, marginalized character, majority character, and the player character. So we use postures, body shape, colors, and also facial expressions to differentiate between these two groups. Like the two groups are marginalized and majority. Yeah, so as you can see, for example, the marginalized group, they're more hunched over back and confident and shy. And in the opposite way, the majority group, they are more like confident, friendly, and outgoing. Yeah, so now I'll pass on to Angelina to talk about the environment.
So here are our environments. At the top, we have our main commercial district, which is primarily used by members of the non-marginalized group. And at the bottom, we have the secondary habitation district, which is used primarily by members of the marginalized group. So we are looking at environments as not only sort of the places where our characters are going to be, but also as an opportunity for environmental storytelling and for putting in some of our ideas of racial bias so that they can later be called out in the workshop. So here are some more specific examples of how we are doing so. So we are using posters and ads in the environment to sort of emphasize our ideas about racial bias. So which groups are represented here, which groups are not. In this particular example, you see the 100 greatest innovators of all time are all of the non-marginalized group, excluding representation of the marginalized group. Here is another example of racial bias in the environment. Just the general conditions that a person or a creature lives in can tell us a lot about their access or availability of resources. So we can see that there's a big contrast in these environments in terms of lighting, the height of the ceiling, upkeep, even something as simple as the presence of public seating can sort of really inform us about the statuses of these groups in the world. So moving on from the environments and art, I would like to talk a little bit about our development progress. So for our development, we've met with external advisors as well as engaged in rapid prototyping. So these are some of the organizations that we've been in contact with, including Homewood Children's Shelter, Assemble, and people from the Collaboratory Against Hate. In particular, one of the conversations we've had was like the Homewood Children's Village said that a lot of their students didn't feel like certain careers were an option to them because of a lack of representation, causing them to see like a certain job as a white man's job and not for them. So in the early stages, we mostly use this to help generate our ideas, but as we're moving forward with the semester, we're going to be reaching out more to them for playtesting and for sort of confirming our sort of information in our game. Now I'd like to pass on to James, who can talk more about the development.
So for development, excuse me, we wanted to make sure that we were moving from a storyline, from general art assets to an actual cohesive story. So that included the game loop that we'd be playing through and having all the guests play through. So we started this out playable via a paper prototype where they would be able to get the experience of communicating with characters and moving through the environment. And we also introduced our finale, which is our idea of having a somewhat catastrophic event that the user is forced to deal with and is one of the reasons why they would go out and seek help in the first place. So that brings us to the current state of the game loop. So we do have you starting at the location. Again, your spaceship has undergone trauma, so you are required to repair it. You are able to immediately go into the finale, but you're woefully underprepared and you're unable to actually complete it on your own. You then go out into the environment of the space station where you will communicate with a lot of the characters that we have available. You're able to potentially recruit them to organized to actually repair the ship. However, if you just go out and recruit one of the characters, you're actually unable to fully complete the issues because, again, as mentioned, on their own, they're not able to offer the complete perspective that is worthy of the repair. So we do have those different progression options depending on who you've been able to actually communicate with the idea that as you communicate with more characters, you get that complete perspective and are then able to progress. Some of the difficulties of what we're trying to do are in general making sure that we are feeling that the finale fully supports the game as a whole and not that it's trying to do something that is too much action or otherwise distracting the players from what they're trying to do. But we want to make sure that it's supporting gameplay and that it's not taking too much of their time or attention away from the actual message. So now I'm going to pass it over to Phoebe to talk a little bit about the tech that we'll be using.
So the game will be developed using Unity, and it will be a WebGL build due to the client's need and also the easy accessibility through web. And the game time will be approximately 10 minutes. Since our game will be evaluated by a research team after the semester, so we will also record the timestamp of some user behavior, and some critical information will be like when does the game start and what choice does the player make. And it is now recorded into a JSON file. And I'll pass back to James to talk about the workshop.
So again, all of what we're trying to do is leading up to this racial bias workshop. So this is going to take place in the spring, and it's going to be where the game itself will be evaluated based on its ability to help our audience of 8th graders actually learn the concepts. So it is not standalone. Our game does not have to hold just completely by itself with no actual other support. There is going to be a short presentation followed by the audience playing our game, and then the workshop following will go through the content of our game to help the audience actually kind of commit the information and be able to learn certain strategies based on that. So the workshop's content is going to be developed around our content. So for example, we've decided to go through specific issues of representation as well as AI bias, and those will be able to be discussed further in the workshop. So we are able to lay the groundwork for a lot of these ideas and progress through as much as we can, but we do have the second hit of the workshop to actually kind of make it feel more real and potentially have a bit more academic approach than potentially what we're attempting to do with the game. So that starts to lead us into our actual production timeline. So again, here we are currently at halves. So we do have softs and finals ahead of us, but the major point for us is not necessarily just finals, it is that spring evaluation and the racial bias workshop in the spring. We need to make sure that our game is playable and try to be as effective as possible in what we're looking to do so that we are actually able to help our audience in, again, committing to this learning about racial bias. So moving forward, some of the things we need to focus on are, again, our meetings with subject matter experts. So we need to make sure that our message is actually landing, that we're not just trying to throw information at them, that we're not just completely missing the point. And through meeting with those advisors, we'll be able to really solidify and make sure that it hits its mark. Another thing we want to do is actually make sure we're playtesting with the audience. We're developing for an audience that is not necessarily represented by the team of developers here, and so we want to make sure we are meeting with them to see that the information is landing and is accessible to them. We want to iterate on the individual modules, so we need to make sure that the pieces of the game actually feel like a cohesive game. They work together and support each other, as opposed to feeling like they're in conflict or otherwise are kind of creating tension that distracts from the learning the actual game is trying to provide. And we want to make sure that we're just iterating on the prototype. We need to make sure that the game is playable at regular points throughout the semester, not that we're trying to just deliver it all in one go. We want to make sure that we have several checkpoints to be able to get feedback on throughout the semester. So at this time, we're looking to thank all of the advisors, all the faculty, everyone who's been able to assist with us so far. We will certainly like to have additional meetings in the future, but now we'd like to open it up for questions about the game.
Challenge. What has been your biggest challenge dealing with the subject matter of racial bias? I mean, it's a huge issue. What has been your biggest challenge in dealing with it?
So, first off, it's very difficult because, not all of us are in that space as to where we've been dealing with, like, racial bias or even bias in general. So kind of making sure, and none of us are kind of really 8th graders at this point, so it's been a while since we've been in that kind of area. So we've had a challenge trying to figure out what if we're kind of being authentic and real as instead of, trying to basing stuff on our bias or what we imagine would happen, as well as it's very difficult not to try to cram all types of racial bias into the one game. We needed to focus down on it because otherwise it would be too much for a single kind of a single 10-minute experience.
Hello. I think it's really interesting that you're choosing to focus on AI bias, actually, or algorithmic bias, or algorithms of oppression, or all the different ways that people talk about the way algorithms play into this. Are you going to have, is the AI character essentially just acting like a kind of racist, biased person, or is the way that they're going to talk about bias going to be linked to the kinds of things that AIs and algorithms are already doing? Does that make sense as a question?
So it's going to be twofold. Initially, we have the AI as kind of a helpful Navi character, kind of tutorial character that we allow us to talk through and kind of explain things. But there's going to be subtle, like, things that you can tell that it's biased, maybe how the character recommends one NPC to talk to over another based on, supposedly nothing. And so in that, we're trying to kind of give the feel of when someone you kind of trust and like take a liking to almost ends up having this racial bias, how to kind of deal with that. As well as, yes, it's going to be more of a kind of robotic, well-intentioned but incorrect view of things. So like, for example, this specific phrase used would be doesn't fit the profile because this, robot has a ton of data, and so it's not seeing the representation and the data, or it's seeing it as an anomaly. So therefore, according to it, the data says that they wouldn't be good.
Thanks, that's great.
Sort of adding on to that really quickly, it's also why the environment becomes important, because the robot is getting its data from the sort of the pre-existing biases which are represented in the environment.
Great.
I had a similar question. You ask, your demo kind of ends with how could the data be wrong? I guess you start hinting at that in the environment, but how are you going to answer that? And if you are going to answer that, kind of what happens next? What's the plan? So
our plan is to kind of leave it on that question, and then our workshop would be, our game would be a part of a workshop that then the teacher could come in and ask the students, so how is the data wrong, or why is the data wrong? What, kind of led to this mistake that, could have potentially caused you a lot of trouble, if you hadn't recognized it. And so, like I said, we're kind of going for the head fake, trying to plant seeds of then the teacher can pull these out and be like, hey, did you notice this? So that's kind of, it's not necessarily going to be answered. It's the robot's going to be reflecting on this, and then the teacher is going to answer it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our presentation where Team Jello played. And this is our team photo. As you can see, we've already had lots of fun with Jello, and we also believe we could create a fun experience with it. So as for faculties, we're lucky to have Mo and Dave as our ETC advisors, and we also have 3 external advisors from Deep Local. They are John and Jake as creative technologists, and Zoe as an associate producer.
Then let's talk about our vision. So we got our initial design ask from our client, which is design a broadly accessible at-home experience using Jello to create a fun family time. And one of our unique property of this project is actually we need to try to behave as a professional design agency. So we incorporate Deep Local's FaceGate into our ETC production timeline. The first step is about the idea generation. So we pitched 2 times to our client. The first one is we can organize 12 ideas into 12 one-liner pitches and then sell them to our client. And fun fact here is we use kind of 1 whole week to hone our final ideas and then trying to get buy-in from our clients. And we really benefit from that. And then moving forward, we step into our pre-production stages. We finish our concept refinement and also finish our proof of concept from both technical and design perspective. And also we engage our playtesting from week 6. And then let's talk about our concept refinement. So based on our initial experiment and playing around with Jello, we found that it's actually a great medium to kind of inspire the creativity, use this traditional dessert. And also how to kind of bring the traditional dessert a new life is our main challenge. So we iterate our ask into user technology and creativity to bring Jello to life, creating a fun family experience. And let's talk about our final product concept, which is a Jello Monster. Here is a one-liner from our pitch deck to our client. Our main idea will be raising your own Jello Monster. Just like you will make your own juggler to fill your monster and let it grow up. And we have 2 main design goals. The first one being we want to create several magic times and then synthesize them into a holistic experience. Let our users say your Jello monster grow up and also interact with you. And second one being we want to utilize this personalization experience to sort of increase our creativity of the family during the experience they playing with their parents. Then I will hand over to our designer talking about our detail design.
So our experience will be mainly divided into these 3 parts. The first one is pre-experience setup. So this will be a physical bonding time between parents and children to make actual Jello in the kitchen. And secondly, it will be customization. So it will be transferred into a digital space where children can customize their own Jello monster. And the third will be a hybrid gameplay of feeding the monster. So this will be an AR experience combining both physical and digital experience. And next, we have our user flow for this whole experience. And here we identify some of the key action steps that users are going to go through in this user journey. And each of them is constructed with 4 parts: the prompt, the user's action, and the feedback from the application, and also lastly, it's a reward that the users get to encourage them to go to the next action step. So the first one is for the pre-experience setup. The preparation stage will be done mostly by the parents. So they're going to prepare making Jello sheets. And this process is usually going to take 3 to 4 hours. And then after this setup is done, they can bring their children for the fun part. So secondly, the children will come in and they will
make the Jello monster together using this physical Jello. So they're gonna like cut the outline of the Jello monster and then place it on a white background, getting ready for the digital part. And then they can eat the extra Jello pieces during this process. And then we have our customization part. So we'll include a QR code in our physical kit, and they can scan the QR code to download our application. So when they first open up the application, they'll see a initial animation and a tutorial introducing them about AR. And then they're going to place this Jello monster under the camera, so it will detect the shape, and then it will have the magic moment of making this physical Jello monster becoming alive on the screen. And then they'll move on to finish the customization part. So they'll give the Jello monster a name, and then they'll finish building up the other body parts of the monster. So it will include the eyes, the limbs, the mouth, and also some decorations. And for each of the steps, they will get a reward from a feedback from the application. So for example, when they're adding the eyes, it's going to roll and blink. And when it's like adding mouse, it's going to turn from a blob sound into an actual conversation. And then after this is done, they can hit the confirm tab and moving on to the next one. So for our actual core gameplay, it's the feeding the monster part. So before this gameplay mode is beginning, so they will receive an animation from the application, like it will be in a speech animation form, where it will instruct the users about the core goal of this game. So they will feed the monster, helping them to grow, and then sending them out into the universe and explore the Jiggly Star. So after watching the animation, it will move into the AR experience. So firstly, they'll have the physical experience of using the right-shaped cookie cutter to cut out the Jello food from the pre-made Jello sheet. And then after this part is done, they will like scan the Jello food, and it will turn into a virtual Jello food in the application. And then it will move into the digital part, where users can hover and see the interaction between their hands and the Jello food and also the monster. So the monster is gonna recognize the food and approach them and eat the food. And as a result, they will grow bigger and bigger. And in the end of our story, the children will send them out into the space, and the Jello monster is going to send out pictures and postcards about Jiggly Star. So this is our core experience. And then we'll move to our technical part.
Thank you, Nancy. So to make that magical story of Jello Monster come true, the first technical challenge we met with is how to convert a 2D photo of physical Jello shape into a 3D mesh. And our solution here is based on computer vision and computer graphics. Firstly, we're going to do the edge detection based on pixel color comparison with the white background. Then we can auto-generate triangles based on the points, and finally export an extruded 3D mesh. And this mesh will be the fundamental one of our Jello Monster's body. However, as you can see, the auto-generated mesh has really sharp edge, doesn't really look like Jello, and now our solution to this problem is to recalculate each triangle's normal, then we can get a smoother monster's body. To make it look even more like Jello, we also apply a jelly-like material and add soft body motion to create that jiggling effect. And as you can see here, testing on the mobile device, taking a photo of the Jello shape, waiting for several seconds, see that magical moment happen, this jiggling shape are jiggling in the air. However, we're still facing some potential problems of the mesh overlapping, depends on the different input of images, and we already solved most of them by doing the image processing. We're going to keep refining this algorithm to ensure the stability of generation. Our second key challenge is for feeding AR. We want to explore more possibilities of intuitive interactions instead of simply asking the kids to tap the screen. Thus, we came up with these hand tracking demos, including detecting gestures like releasing your hands and pinch gestures. And just imagine how fun it will be that open your hands and see the virtual Jello monster come to you to eat the food on your hand. And next, I will pass on to Jerry to talk about customizing monster.
So this is our currency process. We attach the rigged limbs to a basic monster body and also an eyes with animations, and it's gonna jiggle like this. But So we still got a technical problem to how we're gonna attach those rig decorations to the customizing bodies. And our expectation will be we might have a library of different decorations, limbs, eyes, mouth, teeth, and it's gonna show up like the gift we have here. And next, we are gonna hand to Sarah to talk about our strategy.
Thanks, Jerry. So for our next steps of the design, we internally play tested the physical experience to better understand the process of preparing the Jell-O sheets. And we found out that pouring hot water, like handling a tray of liquid Jell-O and letting that liquid Jell-O set in the fridge for 4 hours could be some challenging moments that could take away the enjoyable experience from the kid and the parent. So based on these challenges, we wanted to bring this playtest under our target users to look for any fun moments that we can find throughout the process. So we did this by asking Dave, our faculty instructor, to take this playtest home and to play with his kids. And from the results, we verified that it is very hard to cut out a perfect piece of Jell-O out of anything. So looking at how messy and unpredictable the process can turn out, our following thoughts are thinking about the pros and cons of incorporating that messiness as part of the fun, or taking an alternative strategy to make the process more controlled by adding gelatin or corn syrup. The purpose of this playtest was to find for any hidden barriers of our current flow of the play. And in our next steps of the physical building process, we're going to decide on one of the strategies to really solidify this approach of creating the Jell-O monster body.
So talking about our next step plan, for tech aspect, as you can see, we've already conquered the most difficult part, which is a problem related to computer vision. So what left to us on tech aspect is just to do the monster customization and other interactions in our application. And for design aspect, we now have a clear user flow and a clear narrative structure. So in the next few weeks, we will be focusing on a lo-fi prototype and then our application interface. And after all the things is done, we'll conduct our external play testing with families and kids. To sum up, our product, Jell-O Monster, is a hybrid playful experience combining dessert making and AR gaming to create a fantastic family time. Thanks for listening. We're now opening to questions and suggestions.
Yeah, at the end, after I've played with my monster, am I supposed to eat it? Am I going to be encouraged to eat it? And how do you want to offboard the experience so that I'm not wasting food? Because some parents will say, we don't want to waste food. So what's happening to the monster at the end?
Currently, we are still in process of thinking of what to do with the final monster shape that we have at the end of the game. Right now, with our process, we know that when we're creating the body shape of the monster, the kid is encouraged to eat the negative space of the Jell-O. And after that, after once the digital experience is done, we're still actually in the process of thinking of what to do with the physical body.
So two short questions. Your magical moment is really interesting, going from Jell-O mode to AR. Can you talk about what you're doing to make that a really magical moment, like our transitions are part of it, special effects when it comes to life, and also just have you guys experimented with using preset Jell-O cutouts to control the shapes that they will make so that they scan a little easier? Thank you.
Yeah, I guess this is basic two questions. The first one is how could we create this magic moment, and second one is should we provide some preset like mode to our customer? So coming back to the first question is because kind of like given the timeline of this project, so we cannot make every step magic. So we'll mainly focus on the interaction with your monster. So basically, at the first stage, you create the body of the monster and transfer that into an AR monster, and you can digitally assembling some limbs and eyes onto your monster. And then we will kind of focus on the interaction. How will you feed your monster? How will you grow up your monster? And kind of interact. So that will be our focus on the magic moment. And second one is we are still debating with whether to give our customer the mode, because we are trying to figure out if our design goal is focused on embarrass the messy of the Jello making, or we want to a clear and fancy making process. We'll figure that out based on our following playtest. Thanks. Any other question? Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
So morning, everyone. We are Team Ray Gardener, and we are creating a AR educational experience. And thanks everyone for coming today for our presentation. And let's talk about our project. Here's our team, and I'm Alexa, the producer and UI UX designer. This is Leah as our UI UX designer and also artist. And Harlan and Alyssa are our programmers. We also have John Dassler as our instructor. So we have our client is PA Conservancy. So PV Conservancy are protecting and restore specific areas to provide our regions with clear water, wildlife, and natural areas for the benefits of present and future generations. So they are built a rain garden in Shadyside, Pittsburgh. Rain garden is a tap of water capture features in the landscaping and can help slow and observe runoff from storms. And next to the rain garden, there's a Lincoln School. So our clients want us to build an experience that help the school to better exploring the garden. We are also working closely with the school's STEM educators and also the 3rd to 5th grade students. So we are creating a fun and intuitive tools using AR technology for educators. So the goal of our project is helping students have a better understanding how the rain garden work, and it is also a project that support and enhance the educators' teaching experience. So our target user will be the STEM educators and also the 3rd to 5th grade students at Lincoln School who have prior knowledge in rain garden. And we will build an Android app on tablets. It will be 2 independent AR applications. And those are our metrics. We definitely will put our client requirement on the first place. And another important thing for us is we will have iterations of interactive prototypings. Another dimension of our success is how it could supplement the educational experience since our demographic is kids, so we will definitely have a lot of play testing. So let's pass to Leah to talk about.
Now I'm gonna talk about the experience design. So Just to reiterate that these experiences support educators' teaching experience. So the students already have prior knowledge in rain gardens. So we developed 2 independent experiences. One is on-site experience at the rain garden, and another one is indoor card experience. So we designed 2 different directions because we want this learning experience to be not limited to its physical space. So the students can learn about AR technology in rain garden wherever they want. So I'm going to talk about these experiences more in detail in later slides, but for the on-site idea, users can stand in a designated spot to view the AR environment using a digital tablet. And for indoor idea, users can scan card anywhere to view AR, and we are using this chemistry learning experience as a reference. For art style, we are using low-poly stylized art because of 3 different reasons. One is figurative representation is easy to understand. Second, reduced loading time for AR, and then it is within our scope. So now I'm going to talk about our progress this quarter, and I'm going to start that by talking about some feedback that we got. So back then, we didn't have a device selected. So right now, we have confirmed with our client, the school, and the ETC that the students will have 3 to 5 Android tablets for each class. And each class will have about 20 kids. And some faculties mentioned that even though we understand that this is a tool for educators, it might be even better if students can directly interact with it and the whole experience is geared towards the students. So we decided that students can proactively be involved in this activity and try with the tablet, play with cards, and we thought that that can be a better learning experience. Lastly, measurement for learning. So we decided to provide some guiding questions that educators can't possibly use as a tool, but it is a good way for us to point to students like these are some of the areas that you want to focus on while you're doing these activities. So I'm going to talk about the indoor experience first. And each experience will have 3 to 5 students, and then each team will have 1 tablet, 1 map, and 10 cards, and it will take about 20 to 30 minutes to complete. So as you can see on the right, this image is the map image, and then we will have 10 different cards, and those would be like permeable soil versus impermeable soil, deeper root versus lighter root, blue color flowers versus red color flowers, so the students can compare what happens when they put each card in. So what we provide is the printable maps and printable cards and the rain garden map. And what students do is place cards on the map and view what happens, and then students can learn the role of each component of the rain garden. So for the outdoor experience, when you view AR, you will see the overall flow of how rain garden works, but this one is more focusing on individual component of the rain garden. The progress so far, this is the map that we designed with some instructions and guiding questions. And these are some of the card designs, and AR animations are played when they're scanned. And for playtesting purposes, we only created 5 cards instead of having the whole 10 cards. The whole experience will have 5 cards with five different types of elements. But for playtesting purposes, we have 5 cards. Now we're going to talk about the tech part.
So for the indoor experience, we are using Unity with the AR Core and AR Foundation as the platform. And we also use a built-in library for the image tracking.
Wait.
And this is the early stage demo video. So when putting 2 cards closer, it will show the interaction relationship between the bee and the flower. And this video is about our playtesting demo. So user can place cards on map and use tablet to scan it. When user plays animal card and different plants cards on map, it will have the different combination will have different interaction animation to show. So by observing the difference, user can gain better knowledge about the ecosystem of the rain garden. And this is how bee interact with the red flower, which is kind of different from the previous one, the blue flower. And we also have environment cards here. As you can see, when putting the rock card here, it will show like the water rises slowly. And this is the entire playtesting experience would look like. Through the tablet, user can see how bee interact with different plants and also environment changes. Now let's move to our on-site experience. So we proposed 3 different initial ideas. The first one is marker-based, something like to scan the wooden sign QR codes. The second one is model tracking, which we gave it up because it requires some realistic rain garden models in the Unity. And the last one is the location-based. So from the quarter to half, we tested the location-based approach using the GPS location. So model will show on the specific GPS coordinate that we have already passed in the Unity. So the pro of this approach is that lighting is not an issue because we don't need to scan anything. But the GPS accuracy is varied on device. So sometimes it may take up to 15 minutes to get accurate GPS data. And also our clients consider that holding the template walking around is not safe for kids. Therefore, we switched to our final approach using designated spot view. So we have 3 different spots, allowing 3 to 5 students to use tablets to scan the QR code to see the air scenes. So the experience will be around 15 minutes. And this approach is more engagement for students since they can explore the rain garden and scan things. And also, it's easy for educators to manage. The potential problem is when the lighting is not good, the device may not be able to recognize the QR code. And since we have 3 spots, we want to show different view of the rain garden. And by scanning the QR code, students can see how rain garden look like and how the ecosystem of the rain garden would look like in different seasons, like winter and summer, and even during the heavy rain, because we want to show the water cycle of the rain garden. And after exploring the air view, students can hand over the tablet to next students and switch to different spots. And next, Alyssa will talk about the playtesting.
Okay, so now I will talk about the playtesting part of our project. Since we are trying to deliver a digital tool for the educators to enhance their teaching process, it's really crucial for us to gather some feedbacks from the students as well as the educators. So by playtesting, we are trying to make sure that the students are understanding the ideas we are trying to convey and also having fun through the experience. Also, we want to test the reliability of our tech and how the art assets and instructions are clarified. Also, we want to figure out how much should the educator participate in the experience. Therefore, we set up 2 playtestings in 2 different spots. The first one is the Lincoln School, which is our client. We had 23 5th graders and 1 instructor who had prior knowledge in rain garden. And also, the other one is the Mary Queen School. We had 25 6th graders and 2 instructors who had prior knowledge in water cycle. So here are some demo videos of them playing through the experience.
Look, it's different. It's different. They're wrong. They're wrong. Wait, I just want to try something. I'm not putting this on anything. Oh, wow, we are very smart. So smart. Wait, what if we take it away and add them? Let's see how long it takes it to record. Oh, isn't that cool?
So we were observing the reaction of our students. So as Leah mentioned, we had some preset quiz questions asking about like how the rock in the rain garden can help slow down the water flow and how the bee is attracted to certain color of flowers. So by observing, we see that most students are able to answer these questions clearly so that they are understanding the concepts we are trying to convey. And also we were more than happy to see them exploring the different combinations of cards freely, other than the combinations that we set up for them. And also we see a lot of discussions and cooperation happening within the team. And the feedbacks we got from our students were really positive. They reported that they really enjoyed the AR experience and it certainly helped them better accept the science concepts. And we also got some feedbacks about the room for improvement. Our client mentioned that they are really satisfied with the indoor card game, but it would be better if we can relate it to the on-site experience as well. And also the students were expecting more cards and more combinations to play with, which we will do in the next half of the semester. And we also gathered feedback from the educators who mentioned that the AR technology will help the students better embrace the science knowledge. And they also mentioned that it's easy to handle since a single instructor can lead 20 students through the experience. Now I will move on to our future directions. So for the next 2 weeks, we will be mainly working on the on-site experience. We will have the technology ready as well as the art assets set up. And for the indoor card game, we will expand it to 10 cards and 32 combinations. And by week 13, we will have the full experience ready for the soft opening. And in the meanwhile, we will continuously schedule playtesting in alignment with our clients and keep gathering feedback from the educators and the students. And for our final deliverable, we will have our tech and hardware documentation, as well as the player's handbook for future adoption and reference. So here's a summary of our presentation. Now we are open for questions. Thank you.
Talk loud enough. Oh, I'm sorry, then maybe I need a microphone.
Anyone watching on the stream is only going to be here.
All right, Johnny just corrected me. I guess I don't talk loud enough. All right, so I have a question. Actually, more of a comment. Your demos look great. They look fun, colorful. Yeah, they really work well, particularly at Halves. It's nice to see such demos that are working in a nice way. The AR tech, are you building your own app for the AR tech?
Yes, it will be an Android application built in the tablet.
Would it be easier for your client to use something that exists that they don't have to worry about maintenance, after you all leave and go away?
Yes, I think so. It will be set up in the tablet, and they can download with the APK package. And also, our deliverable will also include the documentations for them to reference.
Okay. So are you, for the future demos, are you going to add more to what you've done that I've seen, or are you adding different demos as well?
So for the indoor experience right now, we have 5 cards with 3 variants. And for the final outcome, it will have 10 cards, which is 32 different cases for kids to explore. So it will be the similar experience with different models and different card designs.
Thank you.
So you mentioned that your audience has prior knowledge. I'm kind of curious if you could clarify what knowledge you expect your audience to have, and if you could also clarify what you would like the students to learn from your application.
Yeah, so on the elementary school, like teaching guideline, the learning about water cycle and ecology behind this is something that they already know, and the educators talk about rain garden as an example of this is how the water flow goes, this is how the ecosystem works. So they already know how everything kind of works, but this tool is to help them visualize it and memorize it better, and then also learn a little bit about what technology can do.
I was initially a little worried when you said that there was only going to be 3 or 5 tablets and 20 people in the classroom. I was like, how in the world is this going to work? How do the students interact as a group? When do some of them move the cards and one of them holds the camera? How does that whole situation play out?
So usually 1 or 2 students hold the tablet, and then other students read the card and then place the cards on the map, and then they rotate the tablet around to see. So the number of tablets is kind of fixed by talking with the client and the school. So that is the maximum number of tablets we can get.
So you really are designing a small group activity?
Yes.
Hi everyone, we're Roblox team. So this semester we're working on collaborating with Roblox, and this is our team members. We have Ruth and John as our instructors. For our client, Genevieve is our main contact, and we also have Professor Snow, Professor Seabird, and Peter, who advising us as the expert in educational assessment area. So our project is like we're researching on different educational assessment methods and exploring those methods in Roblox. We already narrowed it down to stealth assessment. We will talk about that later. So for the deliverable, we will have 2 Roblox prototypes based on history and physics subjects. We will have the test results as the samples of the assessment implementations in Roblox. We're also delivering a document demonstrating the stealth assessment method and how we use those methods in Roblox. So our first goal is to discovering the assessment method that fit Roblox community. We already have the outcome as the stealth assessment. We'll also try to creating the prototypes based on what we learned from the stealth assessment. We want to create a fun educational games in Roblox can help us prove the assessment method. Our final goal is to learn from the result. We'll try to use the test result to analyzing if the assessment really work in Roblox and what we can learn from our experience. Our target audience, including the educational developer who use Roblox Studio, so we hope they can learn from our experience. Our prototypes are targeting for middle school students, so there we will use the test result from the students testing to use as part of the final deliverable. Now we'll hand down to Joy to talk about the research on stealth assessment.
Thank you. So for our research, we begin with looking into similar product and educational games on the market. We find that a lot of them support system thinking, and some of them also demonstrate how they introduce individual concept into their gameplay. And then we spoke to experts at Roblox about assessment method, and also about how to teach and assess in specific scenario in classroom with our ATC faculties. And we are using evidence-centered design for our assessment process, combining with stealth assessment for our prototypes, and we are collecting gameplay data with playtest. We are incorporating 3 models from the ECD models, which is competency, evidence, and task model. And then we introduce concept through layers and levels of gameplay, and then track the progression of learning through the gameplay data to show indication of understanding. And this is a preview of the structure of ECD model we are using, and we're going to talk about it later on. So now I hand it to Jennifer about data tracking and quarter feedbacks.
Okay, thank you. About assessment purpose, we need data tracking method for online playtesters. At first, we decided to use third-party analysis to track the data, like Google Analytics. However, Google Analytics has some problems, such as it can only access the data in real time or after 24 hours, and that is not suitable for our own purpose. So now we are developing our own data tracking system inside Roblox using data stores and then pass it to other HTTP servers, for example, Discord. In the end, we can let the target audience customize their own data tracking. So here are some improvements after quarters. We reevaluate the project's goal. Instead of design pattern, we are more focused on the assessment method. The other question is why Roblox find us since there were existing papers about assessment. To make it clear, we are not inventing new assessment methods. We are implementing existing methods inside Roblox. Also, we follow the suggestions about reaching out to educators. We talked to Scott about physics education and Dr. Erica Snow about the assessment method. So now let's have our 2 game designers to introduce the 2 game prototypes.
So let me introduce our first prototype, the physics prototype. The first question is why physics? So in real world, it's really hard to
create an ideal experiment environment in real life. But in virtual world, we can get the support from game engine to control the physical law easily. And so we started with talking about some classic physical rule because they're based on the textbook and it's easy to find the learning standard. But some of the physical rules are really far away from the real life. So we decided to make some real life scenario because they're more practical and students can apply the knowledge to real life easily. So the first topic we want to cover here is the friction, the comparison between the sliding friction and the rolling friction. So this is a demo we have right now. In this game, students can change the friction of the ground and then push the ball down the ramp. And when the ball reaches to the bottom, and the door to the next level will open. So the reason why players can achieve this so easily is because the rolling friction will not be affected by the friction of the ground. But in the second level, the situation is different. The box cannot reach the button so easily because it's a sliding friction. So players need to decrease the friction to a very small value to make sure that this box can get to the button. Yeah, so in the third level, we combine these two gameplays together. So players need to check about this level, this puzzle, to figure out how to solve it. So in this scenario, students need to decrease the friction and make sure this box can fit into that pit first, and then the ball can get over it easily. Okay, so that's our physics prototype right now, and I will introduce the details of our assessment step by step with the help of our game. So first, our core knowledge here is the friction, and if we break this friction to different parts, it's sliding friction and rolling friction, and each of them will also refer to one gameplay in our game. And the chapter in our game right now is 3 different rooms, and the level here is a single room. And we also have 2 different gameplays to be the first gameplay in level 1 and the second gameplay in level 2, and then in level 3 we combine these 2 gameplays together. So during the process of playing, we will do the data collection, and we will collect the data like the time consumption, completion, and number of retry, and also the thinking time. Okay, so about our data analysis part. Firstly, we will invite some experts to play our game, and then based on the data we have, we will set up the metric. And then after we get all the students' data we have, we will compare the players' data, students' data with our metric, and then we will have the final result. Okay, so let's talk about our history prototype.
I'm Dao, and I will be talking about our second prototype, which is the history prototype. So first, why history? First reason is that it's a very distinct subject than physics. It's talking about past event rather than natural law. And we think that to explore these 2 different concepts and subjects, it's very good for us to validate our assessment methods. And secondly, it's a very good design challenge since there aren't many history games that are out there that fit into the context of our study. We had a prototype 1, which the goal is to make students remember certain historical facts, but it lacks the element that makes students feel engaged and that encourages them to do system thinking. So now we're proceeding to our prototype 2, where we teach students the causal effects between historical events. Here is the prototype duration. So the prototype is rather a simple concept. So we'll give students these little cards for them to connect, and each card represents certain events. And once the students have connected 2 of these cards, we'll show them why these 2 cards are connected and the reason to that. So we put this prototype into paper prototype and to test it. We invited a few peers from ETC to test whether the gameplay is solid. And we encourage them to use think out loud method to show us whether they're actually thinking systematically. The result was pretty sound. The playtesters all think that they have learned new things from the experience, and they're all thinking systematically. So the structure of the experience is sound, but we need to change some little details and fine-tuning some descriptions. Here I'll explain how we are assessing the learning of history. So similar to that of physics, we are breaking down a bigger concept into smaller pieces. Here we choose a specific event and era. Right here, we are choosing the European exploration and colonization, and then we break it into smaller events such as technology and resources, and then we break that into even smaller events such as astrolabe, magnetic compass, and caravels. And for evidence model, we're tracking also the attempts and successful connections that the players have made, and we'll compare those. And for the task model, we will have the same connections showing up multiple times so we can validate whether the player has learned that concept. And I'll pass it to Haiying to talk about our further steps.
So for our next step, for the playtest, we understand the importance of conducting playtests, especially for a project which requires a myriad of data. However, we spend quite a bit of time at the first half of the semester to research on assessment methods and settle the gameplay. Our playtest is kind of divided into 2 stages. At the first stage, which we already have it done, it's like an internal playtest with our ETC students to mainly playtest the playability of our prototypes. And our next move is to conduct larger scale playtests with our target audience, who are teachers and students, to playtest effectiveness of our assessment methods. So for our future plan, we plan to complete our 2 demos in the following 3 weeks with like 3D models and UI visuals, and iterate them in the following 2 weeks. And at the same time, between week 11 to 12, we plan to work on our design document and iterate them in 1 week. And we plan to continue reaching out and conducting playtests with our target audience till the final week. So to recap, we are Team Roblox, and our goal is to make prototypes based on stealth assessment methods, and our deliverables will be 2 prototypes based on subject, history, and physics, and 1 document which will demonstrate stealth assessment methods. And now we are open for questions.
I worry a little bit that with your friction prototype, it might be very possible for players to succeed without really understanding what they're doing, by just kind of hitting the button until it gets low enough and then it succeeds, but they might not know why. Are you concerned about that too?
Yes, sure. So this is a very initial prototype we have right now, because we did a lot of function tests about Roblox Studio. And so after the Halves presentation, we will also polish this prototype and add more details and also add more levels and gameplays to make sure players cannot so easily to solve up problems, and they can understand the knowledge and background of the gameplay.
Thanks.
I'm kind of curious if you could clarify what Roblox is looking for here. You're talking about delivering documentation. Are there any things you found already that you've identified as being a helpful deliverable to Roblox in terms of like technique or process here?
So there are 2 kind of the success in this project. The one is like we're success on delivering the prototypes that can prove as the evidence of the stealth assessment. The other part of the success is to like have a document can demonstrate the stealth assessment. So currently we are still focused on the prototypes, and we hope the people who use Roblox can learn from our experience on trying to implement the assessment method inside Roblox. So currently we have the ECD model based on the physics learning and history learning, so that can be part of the document.
Well, I guess I'm wondering if there's anything specific about Roblox that you're looking at here? If it's just the application of this to games in general, or if it's the application of this to Roblox, and what is unique from the Roblox perspective?
Yes, I think one of it is the UI in Roblox. I think throughout like our testing, we figured out that 3D interfaces are much more useful and like effective in Roblox than like simple 2D surfaces. I think that is one of our findings, and I think we'll like after we have finished the 2 prototypes and tested them, like we'll kind of solidify on that, and then we'll like kind of make a collection of like these findings.
So educational systems often have scaffolding. They have other ways of supporting and hinting so you can get going, and then they drop away the scaffolds as you start succeeding. It seems like it would be necessary in your history example to understand that pictures have meaning, because just looking at the picture, there's lots of meaning. You could look at the picture and guess what it is. Are you going to have hinting structures that then drop away?
Yes. First, there's a description to each of the cards. Once the player click on like these modules, still have like a detailed description of what that means. And then adding hints is also like a plan for our next steps to the history model. So adding hints will be also like adding to our evidence model. So once the player click on the hints, it means that they have less understanding towards certain subjects, and they're confused about like what the next step is. So we'll be adding hints so that like players can better understand like what each picture are representing. And we will also like make our like, since this is like an early prototype, so we have like all the image from the internet. But like for further prototypes, we'll be using our own art and assets.
Hello everyone, we are Team Small Lab Flare, and welcome to our Half presentation. I'm Tyron, this is Tanvi, Valerie, and Yifan. Our instructors are our beloved John and Scott. So about our clients are basically a bunch of middle school and high school students from the Northgate High School District, and they're currently working with Allegheny Health Network, which provide them with mental therapies and other sort of project. And our clients, the kids kind of dedicated their demands through school staffs and therapists working at there. And about our project, our clients want us to build 3 prototypes that's helping students to identify their negative emotions and even prepare them with coping strategies. So the prototypes can be any form. It can be games, it can be interactive media, and as long as they fall into their demand. And our target audience are middle school students and high school students aged from 12 to 18. And we're using the platform called Small Lab, which is a motion tracking system integrated with a projector, which provides multiplayer functionality. So how we navigate through our experience design, for the first step, we paid a school tour and try to learn experience from their Chill project, which is a project running at there currently. The Chill project consists of 3 parts. The first part is the Chill room, which acts as a shelter for students to chill out a little bit. And second part is therapy, of course. And third part is something called anxiety thermometer, which is integrated in every classroom that helps students to identify their negative emotion level. And second step, we did a bunch of group activities to collect data. And third step is we look for inspirations. We look for past projects and also interactive media, the notion of mindfulness, and also collaboration games such as Overcooked, which we think are quite valuable for our project. And before the quarters, we have already developed a pipeline of how we achieve our project, of how we achieve our goal. So we identified the common top issue that students are currently facing, which are basically stresses related to coursework and also peer pressure. And also we have generated many ideas and categorized into three parts, such as art and movement intensive, collaboration intensive, and information intensive. And also we have several concerns about our project, such as the game design for mental health issue could be really hard, and also the timeline is really pressed, and also the target age group is quite wide ranged. So after the quarters, we received tons of positive feedback from our faculties, where we decided to narrow down our prototype category into 2 categories, and also through several play testing over there, we find that both high school students and middle school students are quite love our game mechanics. The only difference is that the high school students want the game to be more challenging. So now I will hand to Tanvi to talk more about our prototypes.
Thank you, Diane. So beginning the development of our prototype, the first prototype we started working on was the art and body movement intensive prototype. The purpose of this prototype was essentially to provide the students with a calming space, to get the students to focus on the present moment, and to have no winning clause to this experience. The inspiration from this prototype came in 2 parts. The first part was in our research with past projects on Small Lab, we really found one experience that stood out to us, which was color streamers. In essence, color streamers is a very simple experience where there are colored spheres following the movement of the wands, and the colors of these spheres change, as well as different movement creates different interactions. When we play tested this with the students and the therapists, we realized that the part of it that they loved the most is that it has no purpose, as well as the discovery of different movements generating different interactions. The second part of the inspiration came from when our school tour, we visited the Chill Room. The Chill Room is essentially a safe space for students to go when they're overwhelmed with emotions. The parts that we loved the most from the Chill Room, as well as the students, was the ambient music, low-level light, and providing a quiet, safe space for students to go to. Inspired from this, we were looking at how we could convert this on the Small Lab platform. So from this inspiration, we conducted our first activity with the students, where we asked them to draw an environment that they consider calming. And we were really looking into the kinds of environments they draw, as well as the elements they include in these environments. And majority of the students came up with nature environments, but also we looked at the elements they involved in these nature environments. So inspired by these 2, we started building on visual effects that we could possibly see on the Small Lab platform, focused in the nature aspect, but also from a top-down view. Through this, we also built a visual effects pipeline from start to finish, where we would integrate the visual effects from Unity into the Small Lab template, which is very specific in its way. Through this, we also found out that the Small Lab platform provides us with many limitations, such as the resolution and the quality of color that we can see on the floor. As a combination of these three, we built our first version of our prototype, which is essentially a nature-based environment with elements of nature such as lotus leaves, lotus flowers, and controlled ripples in the water around them. When we play tested this with the therapists, they really loved the idea of controlled yet free interaction in their space, linked to the environments that the students had drawn earlier. The major change we would make in this prototype would be to gradually increase the elements that they show to reinstate the idea of mindfulness and focusing on one element at a time. We also, surprisingly, found out from the therapist that they would prefer this to be a multiplayer experience rather than a solo player as we had initially thought. That is because they want the students to interact with one another and discover these interactions together. Next steps from here would be to introduce interactions with the environment around them, as well as to playtest this to cater this experience to the Northgate students specifically. So to introduce the second prototype, I will now call Valerie on stage.
Thank you, Tavi. The second prototype we made is a cooperation game. The reason we do this is that we would like to encourage students to work together, talk to each other, and then discuss about strategies during the play. At the same time, we would like to prompt students to connect their feelings to the emotional elements in the game, and then learn to deal with the mental health issues in an interesting way. Before we play our demo video, I would like to briefly introduce the mechanics of this game. So first of all, as you can see, 3 players make a net. So we have different types of emotional balls. The yellow one is joy, and the red one is anger. And there's a door on the right side. So when the joy interacts with anger, the original anger will reduce into smaller anger. The goal of this game is to use the net, push all the emotional balls into the door. Now let's see the demo video. So here's the demo video when we play tested. As you can see, the first thing we do is we try to reduce the original anger. If we push the original anger into the door will shake and change color, which means you have to push the reduced one into the door. So during the play, we talk a lot to each other, talk about strategy and changing our position. So for the playtest version, we only done the basic mechanics. So there are so many things we could iterate. So after the halves, we will do a tutorials for sure, and then add new mechanics to this game. For example, we plan to add more emotional balls. And also, the door can represent the level of a person and then move around. We do think each emotion is part of our daily life. There are no absolutely bad emotions. So we need to learn how to balance those emotions and deal with them. For Prototype 3, we plan to do another collaboration game. Currently, we are in the stage of brainstorming, so we haven't actually decided which game we are trying to do yet, but we will figure it out after halves. Next, I would ask Yifan to talk about the process.
Thank you, Valerie. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the playtesting process. After developing our second prototype, we went to Northgate School District last Wednesday to conduct our first round of playtesting with our clients. And we conducted the playtesting with 6 groups of students, with 3 students in each group. And we also conducted A/B testing with students that were told how to play the game and also what the goal of the game is, and also with students groups that were not told the goal of this game, so that we can compare their experiences and their behaviors and learn from their feedbacks. Because our clients are also part of our game designers, we want to take their feedback into consideration and before moving on to our next steps. So we conducted post-testing interviews with them and asked sample questions such as what elements did you enjoy the most and what elements did you not enjoy about, and also is possible, what would you like to add into our games? Based on the feedbacks we gained from our clients, we continuously make iterations on our prototype. the major improvements we are going to make in the following weeks are add more visual variations into our game, also like increasingly challenging different game levels. We also want to introduce new sound effect and also feedback, immediate feedback when a goal is achieved, so that we can motivate students to keep trying our interactions. We also want to talk a little bit about the challenges and concerns we encountered during this design process. Due to the limitation of the technology platform and also how the projector is preset in the room, we found that the shadowy problems, low resolution, and also light leaking from the windows will negatively affect our game experience. So we decided to talk and communicate with our clients, with the school, and also learn what can be improved in the following weeks and what is not possible to be changed, so that we can design based on our problems and we can transfer the issues into opportunities. For example, we decided to take consideration of the shadow as a part of the obstacles that we can add difficulties into our games. To summarize, our goal by the end of this semester is to design and develop at least 3 prototypes based on the Small Lab platform. And our prototypes will be interactive, engaging experiences that focus mainly on relieving stress and providing strategy to students to cope with their negative emotions, issues. And also, our prototypes will be supplements to the current therapy initiatives at school, so that the therapists can take our games and prototypes into their design process. We have presented you 2 of our detailed ideas today that we are working on recently, and after the Halves, we will keep doing the 3rd prototype, and we are now open to any questions. Thank you for listening. Yeah.
For the second prototype, how do you plan to create the connection in the player's mind between the fact that it's just some colored balls and that these represent emotions? How will you be transferring that?
So we plan to give different kind of characteristic to the different balls, like anger could have a more daunting shape, and its movement is quite, it's gonna have impact to the whole screen, and also its color, its texture, its animation, and also its the sound effects. So basically, we are using all of this together to, to provide different characteristic to different balls.
I answer from here, but to add on to that, we also plan to conduct playtests in the coming weeks to see whether our test of these emotion balls related to this emotion actually link the way it is in our minds. So the future weeks would also be involved in like our assumptions and confirming those assumptions. Thank you.
So you may have said this, but I'm just trying to clarify. What is the message about feelings that you're sending? Like, what about feelings? Feelings just are, and it's not the feelings, it's what you do with them. So what is the message you're trying to send?
Just to confirm, this is for the game prototype that the question is about? Okay, so the question is, what are the feelings that we are trying to put across, or what is the message of our game? The message of our game, of our second prototype. So in talks with the therapists, they told us about the strategy that they use and how they ask the students to deal with anger and the different emotions. They don't necessarily ask them to act as if it doesn't exist. They rather use strategies such as using the recalling happier memories or joyful, or using their positive emotions to reduce the burden of the negative emotions. So we wanted to translate that a strategy that they use into the space. They did say that they could refer to our experiences while they have these discussions in classes afterwards. So we are also making this sort of as a reference to that. Thank you.
Well, I have a similar question and maybe a follow-up question. A key part of the goal is to identify negative emotions. How are you planning to help them identify their emotions?
So first of all, our inspiration is from a movie called Inside and Out. So how we connect the colors with the emotionals. And in the future plan, we plan to do a group activity in the Northgate School, which we will ask them to connect those feelings with the colors. For example, we will ask them, if you think about anger, what color will you think about it? So we will ask them to connect their feelings with those colors.
Okay, I guess I'm a little skeptical that red just means anger. That seems like an oversimplification. So I think, I guess my follow-up question is, what does success look like for you guys, and how do you measure that?
To also answer your previous question about that, so what we also got inspired from was the elements they have already been exposed to as a part of their initiatives in class, and one of that was the feelings thermometer. So they already subconsciously somewhere associate certain colors with certain emotions. But also success for us would be in discussions with the therapists, if the therapists are able to successfully use this experience to facilitate conversations. So this is less, considering how public the platform is, we consider it less a conventional therapy space, more like a facilitator for the therapists to reference.
Okay, thank you.
So different groups will have different levels of stress coming into this, but you also want it to be challenging. Maybe we're not ready to be challenged that day. Can a group come in and set your game based on how they're feeling that day?
I really like this question, actually. I think in our next step, we want our clients to customize the game and prototype according to their emotions, because this is also can be teaching supplements to the therapist, so that they can use this in their class and in their time, so that we think we will be able to make this available for users to adjust the levels in the following weeks. Yeah.
To add on to Mike's question, my question is, you're getting a lot of feedback from the students that they want additional complexity and additional challenge in the game. And I'm wondering, do you feel any tension between what they want and also creating an experience that feels therapeutic and relaxing as opposed to fiddly and complex?
So that discovery of students wanting competition was also a surprise to us. However, when we conducted the interviews with the therapist in the room, they did say that some level of healthy competition is something they would actually appreciate and would have more fun with, rather than only having no winning purpose or clause. In fact, they were encouraging each other, different groups who were playing were encouraging each other, and they were cheering for each other. And so it created a very healthy competition environment, which was also a surprise to us, but then we decided to take that path.
So it's sort of a way to like release emotion as well, to kind of like feel calmness. Is that sort of what you're getting at?
Yes, thank you.
No worries. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Halves presentation for Genscape. This is our team, and our faculty advisor is Ricardo Washington. So we are a discovery pitch project that is exploring a VR experience that utilizes visual and environmental storytelling to craft an emotional journey set in a lucid dream. So at Quarters, we received a lot of feedback that really helped us clarify and refine what exactly our experience was looking to accomplish. So the first piece of feedback was that our focus seemed a bit unclear. Were we focusing more on an experience that was like teaching people how to lucid dream or like about lucid dreaming, or was it more about this emotional journey we wanted to take the users on? So we were able to discuss, and we decided that we do want to focus specifically on that emotional journey specifically. So we're not trying to create an experience about lucid dreaming so much as we're using it as a setting. Another piece of feedback we received is that we were possibly a bit overscoped. We had planned to do 3 different environments based on 3 different emotions. We started with fear, was the one we were working with to start. But now that we sort of know for sure that we want to focus on this emotional journey, would we actually be able to really refine the details of each experience for 3 different emotions throughout the rest of the semester? This also leads to our last piece of feedback, which was the lack of an emotional arc. Seeing as we want to elicit certain emotions from the audience, an emotional arc is really needed to do that, but at Quarters, we didn't really seem to have one. We were just focusing more on the singular emotion of fear, but not how to build up to it. So using all these pieces of feedback, we were able to sort of reevaluate how we want to craft this experience. So we decided that we needed to cut 3 experiences down to just 1 experience that focuses on 1 emotion, which the main one would be fear, but we will, with the addition of an emotional arc that builds up to that. So this puts us more in scope for the semester, obviously, and allows us to really focus and refine the details of this experience to make sure that we get what we want out of this, which is this response from the audience. We also decided against randomized layouts and are doing more intentional level design to make sure that it really goes in hand with our arc. So in order to build up to fear, we have this arc of starting with curiosity. We want the audience to sort of like ease into the world and just feel like they're exploring it, and then work more into this feeling of being unsettled. So maybe some things start to feel off, but it's very small things that are changing, nothing too big. From there, it would move into the feeling of fear, which is bigger shifts, and we want the audience overall to feel like they want to get out of this place or like wake up from this dream. We would also have a win-lose scenario for our experience. So depending on what the audience is able to achieve, they would either feel relief or despair. The most important part of determining our success for this is the audience feedback that we'll receive. So right now our demographic is young adults in their 20s to 30s. We are wanting to focus on sort of the underlying theme of fear of the unknown, which we think is something that's very prominent going into adulthood. So this is one of the reasons we've chosen this demographic. At the beginning of the semester, we sent out an initial survey about people's responses to fear. So we used that to start our design. And from there, we're able to determine the success of our design based on playtesting feedback. So once we receive that feedback, we are able to go back and refine the experience, and we'll continue this loop for the remainder of the semester until we're able to achieve the results that we would like.
So so to get our experience to actually reflect what people are feeling in our demographic, we did a lot of tests, such as probing, which we started with a survey that we sent out before Quarters, just to get an idea of what people associate with fear, such as colors, sounds, objects, etc. And we took those findings and started working on concept art, which we then also would probe to see what hit the best with the best emotional response. For example, we have these shadow figures, which we probed for people's emotional responses to see which one would actually elicit the most fear. And after this, we did some playtesting. We started with a mechanics playtest just to try to figure out what would be the most comfortable VR-wise. For example, movement, we wanted to test whether joystick or hands was better. And from that, like teleportation or continuous movement would work better. And we wanted to test gaze mechanics and things like that. We took what we found in this playtest and we moved it into a setting that actually had assets that we wanted to try out for emotional response. And so we put it into a very basic version of our emotional arc for one setting. And this is the playtest. So you start off in curiosity. It's much brighter. People are supposed to explore it, not be overly freaked out by the layout. It's supposed to be kind of like surreal, like a dream, but nothing too unsettling. And they're just supposed to go around and try to figure out what they can interact with. Then it becomes darker. The colors change to more strange. Objects disappear and reappear, move, things like that. Small things, such as how you saw there was a paper that was floating. That's because there was a light post there, but it disappeared. Then after this, it gets a bit darker, and you'll start seeing figures in the shadows. And these figures will start adding like that dread and that discomfort. And from there, we move on to actual fear, where these shadow figures actually start coming forward. It gets really, really dark. And it starts getting that dread, that feeling of being chased, being watched, things like that. And after this point, we didn't have it in the demo for playtesting, but they'd move on to such as relief or despair, depending on whether they're caught or they escape. Moving on to Lachlan.
So all of our playtests so far have gotten us a lot of great information, answered a lot of questions for us, and I'm going to go over some of the most important feedback we've gotten that will guide us to our next playtest after fall break and through the rest of the semester. Our feedback is in three main categories: the comfort and clarity of our mechanics, feedback about our environment and art, and then feedback, most importantly, about the effectiveness of our emotional arc so far. So starting with the mechanics, something that's working is that movement is feeling pretty good at this point. We've incorporated a lot of feedback from our earliest tests, and our playtesters at the most recent test reported a lot of comfort. They also really enjoyed interacting with the main mechanic of these reality checks, those papers you saw being destroyed as they walked around and looked at them. They really liked the visual feedback. However, something that's not working is it's satisfying, but it's not super clear to testers why that is happening. Only 3 of our 10 testers were able to confidently say that it happens when you look at the objects. Others guessed that it was based on proximity or based on touch, so we know that this is something we need to tutorialize more. Testers were also wondering why we were using hand tracking, and we know that the next thing we need to incorporate are these hand grab mechanics that we've been working on that will get them interacting with the environment more directly. Because something that's unexpected is that players set their own goals. As soon as they did one of these reality checks, many players decided, I'm going to find them all in this environment. And at first, we thought, great, that's sort of the goal where we want them to build up to without even telling them that that's what we want them to do. But then they reported that this goal actually distracted them from engaging with other parts of the environment as much as they would have liked. They also said that the mechanics felt a little too empowered in certain circumstances, distracting them from the powerlessness of fear. So moving forward, we need to do more tutorialization and add these more mechanics that will hopefully get people interacting with the environment, engaging with it more directly. Art-wise, what's working is that the lighting changes that indicate the shift from each emotional state are working very well and are very noticeable. The shadow figures in particular got great reactions from every tester. Their first appearance was definitely the strongest moment of the demo. However, there are other aspects of the environment that were intended to feel surreal, but instead just felt immersion breaking, and they reminded people that they were playing a game in a way that they did not enjoy. There were also some environmental transitions, such as the objects appearing and disappearing, that generally went unnoticed. Even aspects that got good reactions, like the moons in the sky that were also clocks, testers really liked those, but they questioned why the hands weren't moving. And they kept expecting them to do something. And so playing into that expectation is something we'll do moving forward. So iterating on all these appearances and making the environment more dynamic are our next steps here. And then finally, the feedback we've gotten on our emotional arc has been very encouraging for us so far. Our testers reacted exactly when we expected them to, and their reactions were mild versions of the emotions we are trying to evoke. This was true even for our naive playtesters. A few of our testers had pre-knowledge of our game, but even the ones that we had no concept of what our project was reacted in the ways that we expected. That said, the emotional reactions are fairly weak at this point, and more importantly, they don't have very much staying power. For instance, the first appearance of the shadows generates a great moment of shock, surprise, but it bleeds away very quickly once testers realize there's no consequence yet for approaching them. They also mentioned the lack of audio dulling the emotions. Additionally, a few testers thought the shadows looked sad rather than scary, which is something we'll iterate on. So moving forward, our next steps and next several tests on this are to incorporate more sound, incorporate a lot more indirect control, and add that feeling of danger and consequence to the experience to heighten the emotions and sustain them over the entire experience. And now I'll pass it off back to Em to talk about art.
Yes, so at quarters, we had discussed this sort of mood board of trying to capture this idea of like a sketchy, impressionistic style that feels kind of like the fuzziness of a dream, especially with these figures as they might approach you, that is an experience that some of our teammates have had, as well as other people with dreams in general. And so here are some concepts that we are currently working on and exploring. So the top right has these figures that we've been discussing. We sort of base them on the idea of like the original nightmare, which is a concept that's been in dreams for a very long time. And their concepts were based on personal experiences and also experiences of other people and how they've depicted them. We also are exploring how objects that the player interacts with, like clocks, look in different environments, as we plan to have a few different areas that have, like, we have a parking lot right now, but we might have also like a lake or a graveyard as like different rooms in this experience. So we explore how those might look in different environments. And then the 3 images at the bottom are the visual representation of our arc. So again, the blue-green one to the left is sort of where they would start to be more curious. The middle one would be the more unsettled feeling. We wanted to play with saturated colors because that was something the audience had mentioned in the surveys, and we feel like bringing on a more unnatural lighting setting, it would sort of underlie that feeling of being unsettled. And then for the last part, we would move more into a more intense saturation to sort of mirror the intensity we want them to feel in this environment, contrasted with the darkness that's sort of encroaching upon them. And then in the different rooms, the same visual arc will occur.
So based on M's parking lot concepts, we started creating 3D assets, such as the modular asphalt, the parking sign, the lamp posts, paper flyers for interaction and clutter, and the moon. As you can tell, our texture style is now realistic. We wanted to make the environments more relatable to the players, which would allow the experience to bring out the emotions that we want from the players. Moving on to the shadow figures, this is just a very basic model right now. Our goal was to make them feel unsettling and creepy. That's why you can tell from this current resting pose, it's like this slouched over, shoulders forward, kind of head leaning forward. Makes it look like it's watching you or observing you, and that's kind of creepy. And you can see this basic idle breathing animation we have for our demo. We plan to have a larger variety of poses and animations to make them even more unsettling, because right now it's not really hitting the mark. And to finish off the visuals of the shadow figures, we brought into Unity. We created a basic Fresnel and wobble shader. You can see it kind of jiggling there. It's kind of hard to see, but yeah. And then we layered a blur shader on top to create that fuzzy aura around it that Em mentioned before. One interesting thing about this blur shader that works surprisingly well is that the further you're away from the shadow figure, the blurrier they get and more unrecognizable they become. But as they become closer to you, you start seeing their silhouette, you start seeing their wobbling, you start seeing them breathing in your face. And this actually matches the flow of our emotional arc very well.
So for our timeline, we initially intended to have like the first emotional arc with fear done roughly around now, and then be working on the second one for the next emotion. But after quarters, we cut that, so now we are just working on this initial demo that we have right now of the parking lot, polishing that, and getting that done and playtesting. Then we intend to have several different rooms finished for softs that follow the same emotional arc, and we want to do the design documentation that will allow for to discuss the exploration and discovery that we've done during the semester. So we are Genscape. Thank you for coming to our Halves, and we are now open for questions.
Scenarios. I mean, given the horror aspects and the sort of creepy characters, shadow characters.
We are, I guess, invoking a bit more of a nightmare feeling, yes. Since we sort of want this arc to be at first, you're more just exploring the space. It starts off as a bit more of just a weird kind of dream, and then I guess goes more into that.
Right.
But yes.
All right, and my second part is, Lachlan, you mentioned there's consequences. And I'm not quite sure what you mean by what consequences would there be?
So in the final version, the experience would end and the player would wake up in the story when the shadow figures reach them. So the darkness is closing in and the shadows are approaching you, but performing these reality checks, as you saw, the moon breaking, the papers breaking, will push the darkness back away. So there's this hidden timer that they can see visually approaching them, and they're trying to keep it at bay as they move through the experience.
Thank you.
So, haven't mentioned yet much about sound, and obviously sound is a very important thing for establishing these different moods, and I'd love to hear more about what your plans are for that.
So as far as sound, we're not really going to be composing music or anything. Instead, we're going to be using different kinds of sound effects that people would associate due to like the survey that we did, the things that they'd associate more with fear, and we're going to have these throughout the experience. We're also thinking about potentially playing around with infrasounds and things that would be non-audible but give those feelings of fear and dread. And we will begin working on that more after Halves. Right now, we do not have any audio incorporated because our sound designer is also our 2D artist at the moment. We didn't get a sound designer for this.
Okay, just as a follow-up, of course, the sound at the beginning when you're trying to not be as creepy is also going to be important to establish a contrast.
Yes.
Yeah, you'd mentioned that playtesters noted that once they realized the creepy characters have no consequence, that the power goes out of the experience. What consequence are they going to have? Which I guess is kind of connected to the question of like, what does this mean?
The shadows reaching you is what sends you into that lose state, the despair state at the end of our arc, where if you explore the full dream, the danger recedes and you enter the relief state. But if the shadows reach you, you lose and the dream ends.
Okay, so this is about avoiding them. And you just avoid them enough, and then is it time that triggers success, or you reach a goal?
Both. There's going to be once you've gone to each area and seen each area, if you've lasted long enough, then you win. But so the reality checks you're doing secretly add to the timer in the background and give you more time to explore and push the darkness back. They're not going to know exactly, they don't have a clock on there, that they see the numbers of the time, but.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you have any main points of inspiration as a team or individually? What you're building from, what you're trying to do with this?
One point that was sort of a main point of inspiration for us, me in particular, is sort of our experiences with, like, again, I guess these dreams and like sleep hallucinations and other things like that, the setting at least. We also, I think, as a team are very inspired by sort of emotionally like driven stories or arcs, and we really wanted to explore like how to do that visually, because I think visuals is something we're all very inspired by. But I think specifically using the setting of dreaming, it's something that we all have a lot of experience with, especially in terms of like these figures and things. Those were derived a lot from like personal experiences between quite a few of us. So that is one point of inspiration.
So obviously, you're talking about fear, which is a really personal thing, and you're talking about a lot of personal experiences. And from the game as it stands now, I wasn't 100% sure how I would really necessarily incorporate into the environment or the gameplay itself. So I guess, are there particular ways that my playthrough becomes different than other players to sort of be based on what I am afraid of, or is that something that you have kind of thought about?
I think one way is obviously, again, we had the surveys at the beginning where we sort of amassed some information from a lot of ETC students in particular, since they are in our demographic range. And obviously, again, everyone's not like afraid of the same things, which is why we also want to we have like a larger overview of the environment with like different rooms. So the rooms are kind of one way that we're looking at this, so that like there's different areas, different things that people, again, and these are all based off of responses people gave us, so they're not just completely random things we picked. So that's kind of one way we're approaching that, because we do understand there's a level of, this isn't going to be for one specific person, it is for multiple people, but we're trying to find the balance between that, so.
Thank you.
Congratulations, teams. Has day 2. Faculty,